How's it going? Rangers and overall hockey fans, thank you guys so much for chiming back in to Rangers Review episode 53. We haven't talked in 2 weeks, and we do apologize. That's mainly my doing. Hectic schedule going on, was out of town this past week. We're back now. We're ready and excited to talk some Rangers hockey. So to everybody here listening wherever you get your podcasts, thank you guys so much. And for people in the live stream right now, thank you also so much for being here. And don't worry, we'll be answering your comments, questions, and concerns towards the end of the show. We got a lot to break down. Again, a lot has transpired in Rangers land over the past 2 weeks. So we'll be emphasizing, of course, everything that transpired with them getting into the playoffs. Very excited. We got to get a round of applause. The Rangers are finally in playoffs. That's great. Kris Kreider hitting 50 goals and everything that's transpired in between then and what is ahead for them with only right around 5, 6, 7 games left on the season. So very excited to get into it. I hope you guys are too. And again, thank you all so much for chiming in. But Steven, how are you doing today, my friend? Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks because we didn't have an opportunity to record last week, of course, due to our conflicting schedules. But yeah, Rangers are in the playoffs. Kreider hit 50. We officially entered Artemi April after Mika Mott.
April.
And yeah, Kako is back. Got 2 goals last night. And now we're in that weird situation where you have to wonder: do you rest players for the playoffs, or do you push to maybe win that division? It's going to be interesting. But also Andrew Copp getting another goal yesterday. It was an empty netter, but Andrew Copp now has 13 points in 12 games as a Ranger. Leads all trade acquisitions in the month of March league-wide. So yeah, overall pretty happy. Georgiev getting a shutout, of course. So yeah, I mean it's good to be a Rangers fan the last couple of weeks.
And speaking of Georgiev, who would have thought that this man would have won his last 6 games and has a couple shutouts during them?
That's
Granted,
pretty
he
crazy.
hasn't been deserving of all those wins, and he did really, really well at trying to make the Rangers lose a couple of those games when they won 4 straight. That I believe that was last time that we talked 2 weeks ago, but he had a really good start yesterday in Philly. So for everybody wondering what we'll be doing today, because of the fact that we missed last week's recording, and that was supposed to be after the Rangers, next 3 games. So we're going to briefly touch on here, like over a minute span, 3 games since the last time we talked, and then we'll be breaking down more thoroughly the past 4 games for the Rangers overall, because during this span now where the Rangers past 7 games, they are 4-2-1. Steven won the prediction from last week, and how many wins or goals scored. He had the under on the goals, unfortunately, so he stays champ. He's been champ for like a month now. It is what it is. I'm not happy about it, but I have to bite the bullet like the man that I am.
What are you going to do?
Nothing I can do about it. I mean, I'm tempted to fly to Dublin right now and go and try to take it from you. But other than that, there's nothing I got going for me. But the Rangers,
better. You just have to be better. That's all.
I do have to be better. And again, shame on me. But the Rangers, however, during this span now have led up to being 48, 21, and 6. They have 102 points this season. They are second in the Metro. They have clinched playoffs. They are only 1 win away from tying the Carolina Hurricanes for the division at the time of recording this. And really what's going to be a good discussion that we'll break down a little bit here after we go through the recap of the past 7 games for the Rangers is quite literally, what is better for the Rangers? Do you think that the Rangers should stay pat and maybe scratch some more guys, get them rested for playoffs, and potentially lose games because of that, and have them falling right around second so they can play the Penguins? Or do you want the Rangers to go out and still try to win the division and potentially match up against a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs? So there's definitely pros and cons of both those situations. And again, I'm excited to break that down. Just knowing that we have Rangers playoff hockey back, it hasn't kicked in for me yet. Once that puck drops in MSG or wherever they're going to be, I'm going to be ecstatic. I have chills thinking about it, and I cannot wait to see it transpire for the first time in quite a while. I mean, my entire Ranger fandom from when I first started following the Rangers every day on a day-to-day basis was the 2012 season. And I was, 11, 12 years old at the time. And that's when the Rangers lost, of course, in the conference finals because of Adam Henrique in overtime to the Devils. But I was spoiled to start really my true Rangers fandom, seeing years and years of playoff hockey during those 2010s. Since then, I've really missed that playoff hockey, as I know that many of you guys have as well. So to see the Rangers in their first year with Gerard Gallant committing now to not being a rebuild team, but more so a playoff team, pushing to make a run, They're one of the best teams in the AHL and still have potential to win their division. The first time they have now at 100+ points since AV's second year with the Rangers, where the Rangers unfortunately fell short in conference finals to the Tampa Bay Lightning that year. But yeah, it's been a while, and I'm very excited to see the Blue Shirts back in playoffs. So let's get into it now, Steven. Briefly, let's touch on 3 games that we were originally supposed to talk about last week. You go over them in just a minute span, because again, it's been a while. I know you guys only care so much, but those games, if I'm not mistaken, were the Islanders, the Flyers, and the Devils, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah. So yeah, the game against the Islanders. I mean, you get shut out. That's bad enough. But it was another game against the Islanders where the Rangers just didn't have what it takes to even,
They show no life in that one.
To even shoot a dent in their defense. Shosturkin gave up 3 goals on 18 shots. Varlamov had a 27 save shutout. What else can we say about it? There were a bunch of penalties, but Cizikas, Martin, and Barzal got the goals for the Islanders. Congratulations, Islanders! You won your Stanley Cup this season. You beat the Rangers.
And it still is sour in my mouth. Don't get me wrong. I was pissed off from the St. Patrick's Day game at MSG where the Rangers lost thanks to a no call on Palmieri just from go down the ice and score right away. This game was even worse, though, in my opinion, just in the sense that the Rangers, they just got outplayed. But it was one of those games where you knew that if the Rangers were playing a contending team, they more than likely would have had better results. They've had this kind of Jekyll and Hyde year. Normally, we complain about the Rangers, especially in the first half this year. They couldn't compete well against contending teams. And that was your biggest concern, specifically, that we talked about pre-trade deadline. But now, post-trade deadline, post-All-Star break, the issue hasn't been playoff teams for the most part. It has been non-playoff teams. The Rangers just decide to get complacent, sit back, think it's going to be a cakewalk, and then in reality, it isn't a lot of the times.
I'd like to make the point that if you take away the standings, the Islanders are a playoff team in every way.
They are. I'm aware. Yeah.
The quality they have. We're just not a good matchup for them. It happens. The same way the Penguins are not a good matchup for us, apparently.
Yes, and we'll be getting into that shortly. But let's talk about the Rangers-Flyers game quickly, Steven. Their next game now was on the 3rd of April, and the Rangers lost that one. But thankfully, they would bounce back yesterday in the matchup between the two.
Yeah, they concede the first 3 goals of the game by, of course, York, because, rookies will always score against us. Owen Tippett and Joel Farabee. And then in the 3rd period, when nobody saw it coming, the Rangers came all the way back to tie it. Artemi Panarin, assisted by Trouba and Miller, 1 minute, 22 seconds into the 3rd period, gets us back to 3-1. Then it's Zibanejad, assisted by Vatrano and Lindgren with his 27th. And then with 4 minutes and 20 seconds to go, Andrew Kopp ties it up, assisted by Panarin. And then Goudreau had the secondary assist. Unfortunately, we lost in the shootout. Kevin Hayes with the only successful attempt in the shootout. But the Rangers came out flat in this game. And the fact that they got a point out of it, I consider a win. If you would have told me after 2 periods we're coming away with a point, I would have asked, where do I sign? Because this was just not a good game by the Rangers. But you cannot win them all. The fact that they still got a point was crucial in their fight for at least 2nd place in the division. And then the next game, they go to the Prudential Center. They played the Devils, and they played a really good game against the Devils. Sharon Govich got the first goal for the Devils. It was a mistake by Trouba at the blue line. But after that, it was all Rangers.
And that was in part because of Sharon Govich, what happened right after his goal. Braden Schneider dropped the gloves for the first time as a Ranger. Looks exactly what you would expect Schneider to look like in a fighting situation. Absolutely pummeled him. Sharon Govich was out for the game, I believe, because of that. And then we saw there was at least one other injury to a Devil in this one. I'm blanking on who it was, but the Devils were already scarce with their roster heading into that game because Jack Hughes, unfortunately, would be out for the season because of that, I believe, was a knee-on knee with Oliver Wahlstrom a couple games prior against the Islanders. So the Rangers were able to take full advantage of a Jack Hughes less type Devils, because let's face it, Hughes has had a great year when he's been healthy. And again, Sharangovich scores, but then he's out for the game, or at least out for a while, and the Rangers just don't stop putting the pressure on.
Yeah, it was a really good hit by Schneider in front of the bench on, I think it was Jesper Boqvist. And Sharangovich took exception to it, skated up to Schneider, started fighting. Schneider dropped the gloves and then dropped Sharangovich. That's as easy as I can make it.
And it was a clean hit by Schneider, too.
It was a clean hit, and I love that the refs gave Sharangovich an instigator penalty. Because
they need to do that more. I feel like it's so selective when they make
you don't see that anymore. And if you want to keep hitting in the game, you need to hand out more instigator penalties, because if you don't, look at what happened to Trouba early in the season. Players are afraid to dish out a hit because they're worried about being confronted after a clean hit. You need to take a stand against these retaliations after clean hits. Instigator penalty. I'd even go so far as to say it should be a 5-minute major instigator, because clean hits should not be punished. But yeah, that turned things around, and the Rangers go on the power play because of the instigator penalty. And Kreider and Panarin assist on Strome's 16th of the season. Strome back in the lineup for this game.
That was a beautiful snipe. Nice little passing right in front,
too. It was. And everyone was looking at Kreider, but Kreider was moving away from the front of the net and then passed the tic-tac-toe to Strome. It was beautiful. Kreider did get his goal, though, later in the period, also on the power play, assisted by Panarin again. And Adam Fox this time, that was his 47th. And then Braun with his first as a Ranger, assisted by Schneider. Schneider had a fight with Sharangovich, an assist, and he was also involved, but I wouldn't really, consider it as a positive. But the other player that got injured, Jimmy Vesey, was
yes, and he got hurt bad. It was a weird collision along the boards, and I don't know.
He tried to hit Schneider, and I think his skate got stuck against the boards, and
something happened with his knee.
His leg made a weird movement. So unfortunately, Vesey didn't finish the game. Only 9 shifts. But yeah, the Rangers win that game 3-1. Shesterkin wasn't in that. It was Georgiev for this one. .952 save percentage, saved 20 of 21 shots. And then after that, the Rangers, of course, go back home to Madison Square Garden, where they take on the Penguins.
Before we get to that Penguins game, I would just like to bring this up real quick because it's important. And that is a very generous donation from Young Jimmy on the channel. Thank you so much for the $20 dono. Let's answer his question briefly. And of course, we'll be answering the rest of questions towards the end of the show, as long as we have enough time. Steve and I had to go through the no cap has-been era of the late 90s, 2000s. Just thank God you didn't have to go through it talking to me, I would assume. Extremely happy to hear Kravtsov Drury and communication, and we'll host him next year. I believe in Krabby. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up Kravtsov, because I haven't focused on him much. We haven't talked about him much, obviously. He has continued to do well in the KHL, and I'm curious to see what his relationship status with the Rangers is at this point in time. So to kind of pivot quick from this question again, thank you so much for that, Jimmy, here in the live stream on YouTube. I really appreciate that. Steven, what's kind of your quick viewpoint on the Kravtsov situation? Do you think that there's any potential for him to rekindle his career with the Rangers, or do you think it's simply to increase his trade value and then you think he's gone once the right suitor presents itself?
I think they're going to try and find a suitor for him. But the best case scenario for all parties involved is still for him to be on the team next season. Now, he won't be waiver eligible next season, so they cannot just send him down to Hartford without him having to clear waivers. That definitely helps the situation a lot for Kravtsov. The fact that Drury has been in touch with Kravtsov many times throughout the season definitely speaks volumes to me. They don't want to lose an asset for nothing. So it's going to be interesting to see what Drury is going to do in the summer. They are going to invite him over for camp, and they're going to give him a shot to earn a spot on the team. And let's not forget, as good as Frank Vetrano is, we'll get into him because, the Penguins killer did it again. As good as Frank Vetrano is, with the big contracts for Fox and Zibanejad kicking in and still having 3.4 million in cap penalties on the books, it's almost impossible for the Rangers to sign Vetrano to an extension, assuming that Andrew Copp is their number one priority.
And assuming that the Rangers are not able to part ways with any other current contracts, which you'd have
Of
to
course,
imagine they will certainly try
of
to do
course.
so this
There
offseason.
is, of course, I would say the chance of this happening is extremely small, but there is, of course, a scenario out there where they trade Lindgren away, move Miller up to the Fox pairing, put Jones with Trouba, and then have a third pairing of Lundqvist Schneider. You would have basically 4 defensemen on entry level contracts on the team. That would be something. I don't think it's going to happen though. I don't think they're going to move on from Lindgren just yet. But
Yeah, too soon.
if you're going to, if you want to keep Vetrano, you're going to have to move salary. And Lindgren is probably one of the easier contracts to move that would reap some rewards in terms of cap space. We talk about Hedl and Nemeth, but the net gain you get by trading Hedl and Nemeth combined is only like 2 million.
I know it's pennies for what you're
It
looking
is.
for if you're really trying to bring everyone
It
back
is
that you acquired at
because
the deadline.
combined they make 4.8 million, but you're not clearing 4.8 million in cap
Yeah,
because you have to replace those players. Let's say you replace them with entry level contracts. You're only clearing 2.8 to 3 million. That's not enough to sign Vetrano, who's probably going to want close to 5. So it's going to
but
be interesting to see how this affects Kravtsov over the summer, who is probably going to be signed to a very cap friendly deal.
yeah, no, agreed. It'll be interesting to see how that all transpires. But we still got to focus on the now and talk about Frankie V, who again,
Yeah.
as you allude to, the Penguins killer. Steven, what exactly did he do again?
Scored again against the Penguins. It's unbelievable. This guy, when he plays the Penguins, it's unbelievable. I think he has 13 points in 15 games in his career against the Penguins.
I don't know what the Penguins did to Frankie V. I don't know. Maybe Frankie V despised the Penguins growing up. I'm sure he grew up a Bruins fan, knowing where he originally is from.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what fire lights under his ass where he just like, I took that seriously every time he steps on the ice against Pittsburgh. But every single game, doesn't matter if he's with Florida or the Rangers, he is not stopping the production against that team.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but Drew Stafford, every time he played against the Rangers,
Yes,
would be a pain in our asses.
and there's always that one guy from most teams, and Frankie V just falls in that category, respectively, going against the Penguins.
Yeah. Vetrano scored the first goal for the Rangers 24 seconds into the second period. Kreider with an assist, and Kreider in this sequence had a 3-game assist streak, which was I think the second time in his career.
Well, you thought scoring 50 goals would be the only thing that would surprise you this season? No.
There's more. He's doing other things too. So Kreider and Zabanajad assisting Vetrano. That top line, that new top line, is definitely buzzing. Panarin assisted by Cobb and Trouba for the second one, also in the second period, and then the third period. Dryden Hunt with the empty net goal assisted by Mika Zabanajad. Rangers take care of business in Pittsburgh. Tristan Jarry made 21 saves on 23 shots. .913 save percentage is not bad. It's not bad for a game you lose of 3-0 to still have a save percentage over .900. Shesterkin, of course, with the shutout. And what really stood out to me was what happened after the game. The Penguins refused to leave the ice. And there was some minor altercations at center ice. The refs had to keep the peace. And as the Penguins skated off the ice, Shesterkin was waving them goodbye, and it was hilarious.
Well, let's not that while that was hilarious, let's not forget what happened to a crucial player for the Rangers and Tyler Mott. Because of Angelo on the Penguins. If it wasn't for that schmuck doing what he did, Mott would still be with the Rangers right now. Now we don't know exactly when he will return.
I don't think it was intentional, though. I think it was just an unfortunate hit. And Tyler Mott with a shoulder injury is going to be out for a couple of weeks. Hopefully he's back in time for the playoffs.
The Rangers really need a guy like him for playoffs.
Well, I've been raving about Tyler Mott for the last couple of weeks. You know this better than anyone
He's
because
just doing everything.
I love the way he plays on the penalty kill. He's a possession player on the penalty kill, and that's so rare.
Exactly. Kevin
That's
Hayes
so
has.
rare.
Yep.
Yeah, because most players, the moment they get the puck, they dump it in. And
Yeah.
but
We broke this.
Tyler Mott kills off an extra 20, 25 seconds by circling back and passing it back to the defense. That's so crucial. So crucial to a good penalty kill. But yeah, the
And
Rangers win 3-0, and this was a classic. This was a classic 4-point game, and winning in regulation. I brought it up last time. If I can choose one game in a week that I can guarantee to win in regulation, have it be against a team you're competing with for a spot. Have it be against the Penguins. I don't care going to overtime against every other team in the league as long as I beat the Penguins in regulation. And they did.
Two things. One, thank you so much for the super sticker $20 donation from Reek and Poppy Pucks. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that in the live stream. And two, to talk quickly, one, the Rangers have simply been the Penguins' daddy this year. And if you would have told me that would be the case heading into the season, I would have said you're crazy just because of the fact that normally these are tighter games. Not that they haven't been tight games, but still, just the fact that the Rangers have edged them out more often than not has been nothing short of fantastic. And two, what I was going to say, going back to Mott for a second, was that while thankfully, as we see Rooney's back, which is awesome, he slots in right away from Mott. The only issue, however, is that while I've liked Rooney's game, Mott just brings so much dimension to that fourth line and that penalty kill that, I really do pray that he will be ready to go come playoff time, because that is the exact type of player I want in my bottom six during the playoffs more than anything. Regular season, that does not mean nearly as much to me as that does playoffs with the type of style player that we have here. The Rangers have a similar one in Barclay Goodrow in a lot of ways. You can play him anywhere in the lineup. He'll be productive, has more offensive promise than someone like Mott. But it's the fact that now you have two gritty guys like that really can help you in every which way. That's something that benefited a lot for the Tampa Bay Lightning that we saw over the past couple of years. Not to the same extent because, of course, Blake Coleman is a better goal scorer than those two. But point being is that you need that proper balance of your elite scorers, your playmakers, and your guys that simply can do it all for you. Those Swiss Army knives, if you will. And that, I think, is exactly what you get in someone like Tyler Mott. So, again, quick recovery for him. Fingers crossed, praying on it, because the Rangers are definitely going to benefit with having him in the lineup whenever he does, in fact, come back. But let's get into the Senators game now before we get close to wrapping up on the recaps and talking about, all the big news when making playoffs, Kreider, his goal scoring, how the Rangers have looked over their past 5 individual performances, and also taking a look ahead on playoffs as a whole and the schedule, along with answering questions. But in this game against the Senators, what did the Rangers do? The Rangers played exactly how you would hope that they would play against the Ottawa Senators. This was a game where finally we started to see more of a game where the Rangers dominate a team they're supposed to dominate. And while it didn't go in their favor right in the beginning, because Austin Watson in the first period scored himself a goal, assisted by Kastelik and Kelly. But that's all she wrote for the Senators. The Rangers really, really did a great job on keeping a consistent pressure in this one. Artemi Panarin, halfway through the first period, scored his 21st unassisted. Beautiful goal. And then when you got into the second period, that's where the Rangers just completely poured it on. Andrew Kopp, 17th of the year at that time. This being, not even halfway through the second period, assisted by Panarin and Miller. Chris Kreider getting his 48th. I know that from last time we talked, you were hoping that Kreider would just get 2 more points over those next 3 games. He did a lot more since that time over these past 7 games, right? That's his 48th, assisted by Lindgren and Zabanjan. And then Ryan Strome, again, continuing the goal scoring, coming back from his injury from the past couple games. 17th of the year, assisted by Panarin and Lindgren to make it 4-1. And then we had a third period, and Chris Kreider just keeps scoring. He just won't stop. He's relentless. Even in the latter half of that one in the third period, with only a couple minutes left, Kreider gets his 49th, assisted by Vetrano and Braun. And yeah, not much more that you need to say about this one. The Rangers had the goal scoring. They dominated. They had consistent pressure on the Senators. And Igor Shesterkin had a very normal Igor game, only giving up 1 goal on 22 shots. Anything that you would like to add on that one, Steven?
No, I mean, clinical win, 5-1. Kreider getting 2 goals, happy with that. Panarin 3 points, who's making a case to hit 100 despite the disappointing season he's having. And I don't mean he's bad. I'm just saying that compared to season 1 and season 2, where he was on pace for 113 over 82 games. This season, there's a little bit of a drop off for Panarin, but he's still on pace for 100 points, man. That would still be the 6th highest in franchise history.
Panarin is.
If we did not have a pandemic, Artemi Panarin would be in the top 10 all time for points 3 times in franchise history.
It's absurd.
And that is crazy.
One more thing on Panarin, though. At this rate, and again, I know that we're bouncing, up and down with the topics that we're discussing here, but briefly on Breadman is that if he just has a point per game for the remainder of the season, he at minimum ties his season high. So, and Panarin, he's going to get at least one multi-point game in there. Who knows how big that game is going to be, assuming that the Rangers don't bench him for like the remainder of these games, obviously, given playoffs. But yeah, I'd say there's a very good chance Breadman will hit hopefully past 95 points. And while, yes, when you look at the numbers, it isn't necessarily the pace of, getting to, 100 or 110 points, whatever it may be. But if it wasn't for Panarin, you'd have to wonder how much lack of goals would Kreider have this year because of how crucial his passing has been, not just 5-on-5, but on that special teams that has been electric for the Rangers all season long. So, yes, he has given away the goals a little bit, but in return, the assists, the primary assists especially, they are just pumping up the numbers.
Yeah. And there's also plays like of his 25 power play goals for Kreider, there are power play goals where Panarin is not getting an assist, but is still crucial to that goal developing.
Yep.
The play that develops prior to Kreider scoring the goal, Panarin is always involved because he and Fox are running that power play.
And the way that he's been operating, he's just been a dangle machine. Yesterday's game too, we'll get into it shortly, but every single game, I feel like he's just breaking ankles left and right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's doing a little too much at times because the Rangers aren't burning all those chances.
Sometimes he's trying a little bit too much. Yeah, he's a little bit too much of a free skater. He
looks like he's messing around a little bit because he knows where the Rangers are standing. That's what he looks like.
But yeah, they beat the Senators 5-1, and then they move on to the game against the Carolina Hurricanes, which was in my mind, make or break for the division championship. I'm not saying it's all over now that the Rangers lost to the Hurricanes 4-2, but it's getting tough now. But the Rangers started off great. Minute 3 seconds in, K'Andre Miller with his 7th of the season. Zabanjan and Vetrano with the assists. Andrei Svechnikov tied it up. That was an unlucky goal to give up. He banked it in off of Shesterkin's skate from behind the net. And after that, the first and second period, the Rangers played really well against a top team in the league. And I was really impressed that the Rangers were able to stick with them for 40 minutes. And then you go into the third period and all you have to do is win one period. But that's when the class and the difference in quality really showed, because the Carolina Hurricanes are just a better team. We might have the better top end players, but overall the Carolina Hurricanes are just the better team. Seth Jarvis with his 14th of the season, a minute, assisted by Aho and Shea.
That was
and then Stahl with his 14th.
Regarding Jarvis' goal too. He just right behind us.
Yeah, and then Jordan Stahl got a little lucky with a deflection that landed right on his stick, assisted by Shea and Fast. So, unfortunate there. But yeah, the Rangers tried, but they couldn't get back in it. You're down 3-1. You pull the goalie, and then the moment we've been waiting for weeks, it happened. Kris Kreider is a 50-goal scorer in the NHL. There's a line I never thought I'd say. Kris Kreider is a 50-goal scorer in the NHL. Now, I looked this up right after he scored. There's only 4 other players in NHL history who recorded their first 50-goal season after the age of 30. The other 4 never hit 50 again. So we'll see what happens with Kreider, but one of only 5 players to record his first 50-goal season after turning 30 is pretty impressive. John Buchik, I think that's how you pronounce his name, the guy, the Boston Bruins legend. Then there's Joe Mullen, Vic Hadfield, and Jean Pronovost, who Kreider now joins as the only 5 to do this. He also joins Yager, Graves, and Hatfield as the only Rangers to ever hit 50 points in a season. And he's only one goal away from tying the league-wide record for Ranger draft picks in a single season. Only Rick Middleton in the early 80s had a 51-goal season. So
Kreider is going to get it.
Records are going to be broken. Kreider scores, Kopp and Strome with the assists, and then Aho with the empty netter, assisted by Svechnikov and Teravainen. Aho with a 3-point game for the Hurricanes was definitely the standout there on the score sheet. For the Rangers, no player had more than 1 point, so it was a little bit of a letdown. But we're still in it. We can still win this division. And before we move on to the last game that we played last night, I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial and people might disagree with, but I care about winning the division, because as much as people probably don't care about the division championship banners, I kind of do, because first of all, the Rangers don't have that many. And second, if we don't win the Stanley Cup, if you win the division, you still have a banner to remember this incredible season the Rangers have gone through right now. We're talking about a 50-goal season for one of our own draft picks for the first time ever, because Vic Hatfield wasn't a Rangers draft pick either. We're talking about a season where our goalie is going to win the Vezina. We're talking about a season where Panarin is going to hit 100 points in his worst of his first 3 seasons as a Ranger. We're going to have a season with 4 players hitting 70 points. Last time that happened was 1994.
Oh, the chills, Steven, the chills.
The fact that we have deadline day acquisitions that perform the way they do brings back memories of Matt Ho. I don't know. I don't want to go too far, but look, what I'm saying is, if the Rangers win the division, I'm going to be happy that we at least get to raise a division championship banner into the rafters, because we only have a handful of them. We're not like the Montreal Canadiens where you cannot watch the game from the nosebleeds because there's 50,000 banners in the way.
And let's keep in mind, it's not like the Rangers are just some late expansion team. They've been around for quite literally just under 100 years. So the fact that they have had such little amount of, divisional success by winning the division and playoff success, they don't have nearly as much as what you would hope for to this point overall. It's telling. So
we're talking about playoffs?
Yeah, what do you mean playoffs? Look, we got plenty more to discuss here. So let's briefly touch on last night's game at the time of recording this, because this was a big win for the Rangers. A game that honestly, they did not play in any which way for the most part that impressed me.
They didn't start off great. No,
they had a slow start, and the entire game they just looked like a team that was gliding on the ice against a Flyers team that had some young, promising players, and Bobby Brink being the most notable rookie for them, just won the championship for them in college for Denver over the weekend, already with the team and getting some action, along with others. Flyers, those schmucks a couple days ago, of course, ended Keith Yandle's Ironman streak just because of the stats of the club. That will never not piss me off because of the fact that you just did it for the sake of doing it, just having the lineup afterwards. I don't condone that. I'm sorry, Keith. But no less, the Rangers, again, slow start in this one, but Kaapo Kakko has his best game, one of his best games of the season, and best game, of course, back from his injury. He scored first in the first period, assisted by Goodrow and Miller. That was Kakko's 6th of the season, a nice snipe right down the slot there in the offensive zone. Then the second period, Filipino makes a beautiful pass right around behind the net to set up a right there in front stick on ice and Kaapo Kakko to give the Rangers a 2-0 lead. That was Kakko's 7th goal, assisted by Hedel. Again, really liked what I saw between those two. Hedel back in the lineup. Of course, Laffy was out being a healthy scratch. They're saying because of playoff reasons. Regardless, the Rangers, they didn't need Laffy in this game. I don't think it changed much. But Kaapo and that Hedel connection really looked well, which definitely put a smile on my face. Artemi Panarin got a beautiful backdoor pass that he one-teed that squeaked through on the left side in the second period. His 22nd of the year, assisted by Trouba, and that was Trouba's 26th apple.
Can I quickly chime in before we move on to the last goal?
Yes.
Because it's Artemi April now. The Rangers tweeted that out after the goal last night. Since entering the league in 2015, no player has more points in the month of April than Artemi Panarin. Artemi Panarin has 58. The second most points in that span in the month of April is Connor McDavid with 48.
Wow.
And then Barkov and Matthews are tied for third with 43.
I think what's most impressive about that for Panarin's sake is the fact that he's always ending the season strong,
Mhm.
regardless of result. Granted, he's had his playoff runs, not much, but yeah, it's still very impressive for
Yeah.
Breadman per usual. And then the third period for the Rangers in this game, it wasn't a fancy goal, it wasn't empty netter, but it continued a stat pad for Andrew Kopp, leading the league still, yes, and points being an acquisition at the trade deadline. His 18th of the year, assisted by Goudreau and Trouba, and the Rangers won that one. That was a shorthanded goal, by the way, too. And the Rangers won this one in total 4-0. Just again, a game that wasn't pretty for the Rangers at all. Adam Fox, I didn't like his game. I thought Fox had some costly turnovers earlier in the game too. That thankfully got bailed out because Georgiev had a good game. Didn't face too many shots, but again, 28 out of 28. That's still very, very good. Happy for Georgiev. Again, another shutout. He's now won 6 straight. And the Rangers, at that point, of course, at the time of talking right now, are 2 points behind the Canes for first in the Metro. So before we get into anything further, I just did want to briefly touch on how the Rangers' individual performances, if you do those totals over the past 5 games, how important that they have been. And that has all been headlined, of course, by, yes, Artemi April and Artemi Panarin. Panarin has 7 points in his past 5 games, including 3 goals, 4 assists. He has 89 points on the season and very well may get to his career high, if not hit a new career high by the time the season ends. He's only 6 points away from tying that one, 6 or 7 at least. Then Mika Zabanjan. Mika had 4 apples over these past 5 games, 75 points on the season. A very strong year for Mika. Just a very balanced year is what we've seen from him. Kris Kreider, 6 points in his past 5 games, per usual, 4 goals, 2 assists. 71 points, career highs on all fronts. I mean, need I say more? Andrew Kopp, 5 points over his past 5, 2 goals, 3 assists. Frank Vetrano, who doesn't necessarily have endless points over the past 5, but does have 10 points in his first 15 games of the season with the Rangers, and is 4th out of all acquisitions at the trade deadline in the AHL. So, yeah, looking great. PK for the Rangers is 9th in the league at 82%. Power play is 25.5, which is 5th percent. Rangers power play and PK has been strongholds for them all year long, and it continues to this point, even with things dying down a bit because the Rangers haven't had nearly the amount of power plays the first half of the season as they have had second half, as we've talked extensively on how teams are changing their approach against the Rangers, knowing how lethal that they are with special teams. So now, Steven,
Can I add
what do you
one
got
thing
for me?
about Andrew Kopp, please?
Please.
Andrew Kopp has recorded a point in every game as a Ranger except the one where we were shut out.
That's damn impressive.
He's played 12 games. He had points in 11. The only game where he didn't get a point was the 3-0 loss to the Islanders. Every game the Rangers get at least a goal, he's involved. He's on the score sheet.
So it sounds like me being so adamant about wanting Andrew Kopp prior to the Rangers acquiring him wasn't such a bad idea after all. So I'm
No,
glad.
and I updated my chart today of my table today with production by trade acquisitions in the month of March. Points for their new teams among players traded since March 1st. Andrew Kopp, 13 points. Then Matthew Joseph and Claude Giroux with 12. Frank Vetrano and Ricard Raquel tied for 4th with 10. Then Dadonov with 9, because technically he was traded. But I keep that in there as a joke, and people always go, Dadonov wasn't traded. But Nick Leddy, Nick Paul, and Taylor Radish with 7 points. Giordano and Sherrod with 5 as defensemen, it's not bad. Sundqvist, Lindholm, and Domi and Tyson Yost with 4. And then Sprong, Tippett, and Brendan Hagel with 3. So out of the top 5 players, Kopp and Vetrano are both in there. The Rangers have really struck gold at the deadline. And you know the most beautiful thing about it, Tyler?
What?
They didn't give up first-round picks or top prospects for it.
Yes. That is what we would like to call a Chris Drury masterclass of a trade deadline. Talk about making up for a poor offseason in certain ways. Quite literally one trade more than anything else. I love the fact that Drury was able to realize what exactly the Rangers needed and what was the best route for them in order to acquire the players that were best for this team. Perfect evaluation. If the Rangers go anywhere this year, it'll be because of guys directly like Kopp, like Vetrano, and potentially Mott as well, depending on when he gets back. All those guys have had tremendous impacts for the Rangers. Awfully reminiscent, too, of course, the Rangers trade for Derek Brassard, John Moore, Derek Dorsett back in the 2010s. So, yeah, very interesting. Very happy, though, with what the Rangers and Drury has done.
Also, the fact that the Rangers shut out the Flyers and beat them 4-0 on the second of a back-to-back where they had to travel. Impressive.
And they didn't even look good. They quite literally did not look good outside of Kakko and Hedel, in my opinion.
And they played a team that I fully expected to try and get revenge because they conceded 9 goals in their prior game.
Yep.
Two nights before that. They lost to the Capitals 9-2. Usually what you see when you play a team coming off a 9-goal defeat is that, they play harder. But there was a sequence in the third period where we went 11 minutes without a whistle.
I know, that was bizarre.
The Rangers were happy because they weren't going to risk injuries. The Flyers were like, yeah, whatever. We'll go for a high draft pick. It's fine. It was an easy win, which I did not expect, to be honest. So, yeah, I'm happy.
I did not expect that to be an easy win either. No. I mean, rightfully so from what we've seen all season long. But before we talk, because I really want to break down again quickly on Kreider and then playoffs for what's next. If you look at here, the statistic, it was on a graphic I just saw prior to the Flyers game yesterday. So keep in mind, this is one game off. So I don't know how exactly if the numbers are the same, a little bit different. No less. Pre-deadline for the Rangers for time defending in defensive zone. They were 5 minutes and 56 seconds pre-deadline. That was 19th in the league. Now, since then, post-trade deadline, they are 4.45, which is third best in the league. Slot passes against 12.9, which was 22nd pre-trade deadline. Post-trade deadline, 8.9, which is first in the league. Slot shots against, 21st in the league at 12.8. Pre-deadline, post-deadline, 8.9 as well. First in the league. Cycle chances against, 7.8, which was 26th. Pre-deadline, post-deadline, 3.9. First in the league. I think you're getting the trend here. And expected goals against, 24th at 2.69. Post-deadline, 2.16. Fifth best in the league. So you can clearly tell outside of the individual performances that we have seen that as a whole, this team is just so much more balanced. They have the depth. And once Mott is back as well and everything is truly clicking, I mean, the Rangers are really good. The Rangers may very well surprise people. May surprise people like Steven and I come playoff time too, depending on everything that transpires. But at this rate, it wouldn't be outlandish with how much their second half has improved the team on a balance front.
Before the deadline, I really wasn't very hopeful for our chances in the playoffs because we had massive holes, and the graph that you are referring to proves that. And I've mentioned this several times. The Rangers ranked 23rd in the league in 5-on-5 goal scoring prior to the deadline. So there were some massive holes. They were carried by elite goaltending. They were carried by an elite power play. Now they are a much more balanced team that can score at even strength. And just to put things into perspective about Kreider's 50-goal season, I went over the top 10 goal scorers in Rangers history single season, and I looked at the number of goals the Rangers scored those seasons to see how much they contribute to the team's goals. Kreider has scored 22% of our goals this season. 22%. Jágr in 05-06 was at 21.6%. But then you look at Adam Graves, who had 52 in 93-94. Only 17.3% of the team's goals came from Adam Graves. Puts things into perspective a little bit more about Kreider.
It does. It really does.
Kreider's season, in my opinion, is more impressive than Adam Graves in 93-94. Also because, let's not forget, that team had 6 Hall of Famers on it.
Now, here's one thing. Obviously, in saying what you just said, this isn't a slight on Gravy at all. We're just simply discussing this because of the fact that Kreider is having such a Adam Graves-like season. It's actually absurd how similar they are. But still, when you look at the advanced numbers a little bit, as you just broke down, it does make it all that more impressive that with Kreider doing what he's doing when he doesn't have
Scoring
the
was
same type of
higher.
elite talent like he did, that being in Graves at least in 94.
Yeah, scoring was higher in 93, 94. And if we go even further back to Vic Hatfield, who had 50 goals, exactly the same amount as Kris Kreider. In 71, 72, those 50 goals only accounted for 15.8% of the team's goals. So Kreider is doing it when the team is not scoring at the same rate as those other seasons, which makes it all the more impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, before we go forward, we do have another donation. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for the $2 dono. He says, Cop centering Kane and Panarin 2022, 2023. Kane ain't coming to the Rangers. Okay.
No.
We need to stop that. I get it. Trust me when I say that I perfectly understand us fans wanting an elite player, but
I'd
Kane
love to see Kane on the Rangers, but financially it just doesn't make sense.
financially doesn't make sense. And honestly, at this point in Kane's career, where the Rangers are right now, does it make all that much sense? And again, I will sound like a hypocrite because I promise you, if the Rangers acquire Kane and make it work without giving up guys that I want to stay on this team, then by all means, I'm for it. Like, let's make it happen. But there's so many obstacles in the way. I don't see it. Again, I've been wanting Patrick Kane as a New York Ranger the past decade. Okay, my infatuation with him hasn't changed. However, what also hasn't changed is the financial impact, the repercussions right away. And for a Rangers team that, again, has to be paying up over these next couple of years, more of these ELCs expiring. They have to worry about the guys that they have that are hitting the market this offseason as is, with all of them, for the most part, being productive and then some. So those are the things we need to be looking at. Again, trust me. Oh, I get it. Who doesn't like Patrick Kane? Unless, of course, you're Blackhawks against the Blackhawks or, a team in the division, a fan of them. But no less, I appreciate that donation. So before we get on to answering some comments, I did want us to talk about briefly, Steven, a couple things. The main thing, however, being about playoffs. So the Rangers now are officially in playoffs. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, is how are they going to go about playoffs? What is best for them? Because as things stand, we're a game behind first place, tied for first place, even though that the Canes probably have an upper edge because they beat in the Rangers more often than not this season. So do you think it's in the best interest of the Rangers to play the Toronto Maple Leafs, assuming that they win the division, or the Penguins? Because in my opinion, I understand both sides. If you want to bank on your in-season success, why wouldn't you want to match up with the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? Problem, however, is we don't know if that in-season success will mean that success in playoffs against a Penguins team that knows damn well how to win it all. Yes, they haven't done it in a couple of years now, and yes, that core group outside of Malkin and Crosby and Gensel aren't necessarily the same, but they still have the weapons. They still have the coach, the former Ranger and Sullivan, to make it happen, versus a Toronto team that can't stop getting out of their own way when it matters most. These how many years in the first round? That narrative has continued. So what do you prefer? Because for me, I'm okay if the Rangers go up against the Penguins. I'm excited for that series. I think it'll be a tight one. And Toronto, I'm excited for that too, because we haven't seen that much. I don't remember the last time the two have matched up in playoffs, if at all. And secondly, Toronto, if you look at their matchups this year, they haven't had obviously the same schedule as a team like the Rangers have in the States. Matthews, who's having a Hart-type season, rightfully so happy for him. He's doing a tremendous job. Is he going to be able to transition that over against a Rangers team come playoff time with Igor Shesterkin in that? So pros and cons, I'm kind of neutral either way, but I am a little bit on your side in the sense of I do want the Rangers to win the division, because why wouldn't you want them to win the division?
So my thing is more that I don't really value regular season performance against a specific team when it comes to playoff matchups. And a prime example of that is the Rangers against the Hurricanes in 2019-2020, where we swept them in the regular season and they swept us in the qualifying round. Other examples, the Capitals lost to the Lightning in 2017-18, but then beat them in the conference finals. The Canadiens beat the Bruins 4 out of 6 games in the regular season in 2010-2011, but then lost to the Bruins in the first round. We beat the Penguins 3 times in the regular season in 2015-2016, and they beat us in 5 games in the first round on their way to their Stanley Cup. the Senators beat the Penguins the following year in the regular season, but then lost to the Penguins in the conference finals. Regular season performance, regular season results against a specific opponent do not guarantee success in the postseason. I want to win the division because I want to guarantee my team home ice advantage in not just the first round, but also the second round if we make it that far.
That's a good point.
Also, I would love to beat the Maple Leafs in round one because the Bruins have done it like a bazillion times. Funny story, by the way. Speaking of the Maple Leafs, this year in the draft, the Maple Leafs can draft players that weren't alive the last time they won a playoff series. Because they last won a playoff series in 2004. Yep. And there are draft eligible kids who were born after that.
You would know that.
So look, I don't care who we play. I just want to get the best possible position in the regular season. Now, if you're asking me, should we rest players or should we go for it? Depends on the player. I'm perfectly fine with giving Adam Fox a game or two to rest up. If we look at our schedule, the games we have left, we play the Red Wings, the Jets, the Islanders, the Bruins, the Hurricanes, Canadiens, and Capitals. I think those last two games after the Hurricanes game, we play home against the Hurricanes, the Canadiens, and the Capitals. I think we're gonna rest some players there because by then the playoff seeding will be final. If we cannot get caught by the Penguins, if we cannot pass the Hurricanes, those last two games we're gonna see some call-ups from Hartford. We might see Brennan Othmann get a game or two.
That's interesting. And before we pivot to Othmann, because I know that you want to talk about him briefly for a quick prospect report, I did want to say regarding playoffs, here's a very good point too. What is better for the Rangers to either have their guys be, sitting, being healthy scratch so they can be, kind of rejuvenized for playoff time and hopefully get the best out of them, or two, having all the guys playing full steam ahead with momentum heading into the playoffs.
That's a really good point too, because the Lightning a couple of years ago
Exactly.
took their foot off the gas and then got swept by the Blue Jackets.
And the Artemi Panarin Blue Jackets, no less. So that was a prime example, but we've seen that year after year. There is always that risk of, say you crack playoffs fairly early with a good amount of games left in the season. Then you do line up and you have other guys come in the lineup that normally aren't playing, and you let your vets and your normal stars sit. That's all well and good to make sure that they stay healthy. But again, naturally, when you're a hockey player, you're in a routine for an 82-game season. You're now just going to abruptly break that routine for potentially, upwards of a week's end, depending on how much you're not going to play. And then you're going into the most intense start of a playoff that you could imagine. So that's a lot. And naturally, these players are accustomed to it. Many teams combat it without a problem. But there is still that risk versus, say, going up against a hungry playoff team that maybe that playoff team just stuck in the playoffs. Again, that won't be the case for the Rangers based on their first-round matchup. But depending on others, like we've seen so many teams over the years have tremendous second halves, just crack the wild card, and they go out and make a massive upset because they were full steam ahead. They had foot on the gas and they never stopped.
They had to win to get in. They had to play every game to win.
They played every game like it was their last. And that's what you don't have.
Yeah, they go up against a team that had some minor leaguers playing because we're resting this player and that player. That's what worries me more than whoever we're playing.
I agree, and that's what's going to be very interesting to see how Gallant goes about this over these next.
But a quick prospect update on Brennan Othmann. The kid's on fire. He broke the franchise record for goals and points the last couple of weeks. He now has 46 goals, 47 assists for 93 points in 64 games.
Wow. That's it. Trust me when I say that I'm so happy that the Rangers acquired Othmann after originally being slightly upset that the Rangers did not get a center in that position or potentially trade that pick. So far, so good.
So far, so good. And, if you look at Will Cooley, who's also in that league, of course, he's having a really good season. Ryder Korczak, who's in the WHL, is having a really good season for them. Korczak plays with the Moose Jaw Warriors. He has 77 points in 66 games.
Awesome.
Not as impressive as Othman, but he was a third-round pick. So if a third-round pick is over a point per game in juniors in his first year after being drafted, I'll take it. It certainly beats him not being a point per game player.
Correct.
Will Cooley, 43 goals, 37 assists for 80 points in 58 games. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with these kids because the World Juniors is going to be played over the summer, remember?
Yep. That's a good point. Yeah, that's true.
We'll see if Othman is actually getting an invitation this time because they can select players that weren't on the team in December. It's going to be like a new roster. So we'll see about that. But yeah, super happy with what Othman has been doing. And Othman, Korczak, and Cooley have really stood out to me in juniors this year. Together with Berard, those are our big four.
And that's good because there's a part of me that feels like that at least two of those four are really going to become instrumental for the Rangers over these next 5 years. Whether that is because they are utilized, say, via trade for something bigger or because of them coming into the Rangers lineup and actually just adding further depth, having the Rangers in more of a rotation where they can sacrifice maybe partying with some vets because they know what they're getting in their young studs. And it's a cycle, right? The best teams in the league are the ones that are able to year after year go through a long window of having a certain amount of playoff success, but also having a good balance of some guys on ELCs. The Rangers want to have, say, a very good next decade. They're going to need to bank on some strong drafting. And those guys, again, that are hopefully stepping up and either can be trade chips or guys that, again, can be utilizing your bottom six and make quite the impact right away. Just throw them in there. Tampa is always the stereotypical team, but there's a reason for it. They're just a club that year after year over the past decade easily, they have always been a force to be reckoned with. And it doesn't matter who goes in that lineup. They're always making some type of impact, and they know what their role is more than anything, too. There isn't much questioning, it feels like, when you are, in fact, a Tampa Bay Lightning and what exactly your impact is supposed to be for that team in trying to win a championship.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But it's I said this in a previous recording for us. It's amazing how we made the seamless transition from our best prospects being defensemen in Schneider, Lundqvist, Jones, Robertson last season to now our best prospects being forwards in Othman, Korczak, Cooley, and Berard.
Granted, I still view most of those defensemen as prospects because they've only had a cup of coffee. I know they're not technically it. I understand. I'm just telling you my thought process.
They're still prospects, but for me, the cutoff is once they get to New York or Hartford, I consider them signed. I know Othman and Cooley are signed, but if they are in New York or Hartford, I don't consider them in the same group of prospects anymore.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay.
If they still play in Europe, college, or juniors, that's a different stage of their development.
We do have another donation here in the chat from Kurt. Thank you so much for the $5 donation. I appreciate that, Kurt. Thank you so much. Shout out to everybody in the live stream, too, if you guys are listening, watching, wherever you get your podcast, especially here on YouTube. If you're watching live, thank you all so much for being here. I see Darren is a great supporter of mine, the biggest Mets, and he's also becoming a Rangers fan, too, that lives in the UK. So we got people from all over the place. Love to see that. Shout out to Brody and all you other guys.
It's my time zone.
What's that?
UK is my time zone.
Yes, exactly. And Darren stays up till like 3-4 in the morning all the time, just watching my baseball coverage. He's an absolute beauty. You got to appreciate the support. But let's get into some questions now before we look at the upcoming schedule and wrap things up. This being episode 53. That's going to be interesting. Want to look at the jersey potential there too for the Rangers and their history. Upcoming schedule, no, not there yet. We'll do Q&A time. So for, I'd say between 5 and 10 minutes, guys, we're going to answer some of your questions if you have any. For people that have been in the live stream, if you want to get some answers question live, just make sure, one, you're subscribed to the Rangers Review YouTube channel. Make sure to check us out. And two, have those notifications on so that way you know when we do these pods. Because unfortunately, we haven't been as consistent as we would like to be given our normal schedules. But more often than not, we do try our best to give you guys at least a couple hours notice before we end up doing these shows. That way, you guys can jump in here the best that you can, and that way we can answer your questions. But Riken, with another $5 donation, thank you so much for that, too. Really, really appreciate everyone's support today here in the show. Let's see. Always here for the coverage. Love to see that. How's it going, Watermelon? Let's see. Just what's up, Brody? Too. Hope you're doing well. So I did see some comments earlier, so I'm gonna go up here in the chat real quick. Let's see. Master says, "What do you guys agree that Gallant should have guys like Kreider, Panarin, Zib, Fox, Lindgren, Trouba all rest at least one game before playoffs, especially Fox and Panarin? I mean, at least one game. I don't see how that hurts. I think we have a different discussion. Obviously, if you're talking about missing maybe like the final 4 games or something, or maybe
I
you're going
think
off a
I
little
think
cold.
I think it depends on what the players want, of course.
Yeah."
I don't think Kreider's gonna sit a game.
I don't think Kreider's going to sit a game either, to be honest with you,
I
unless the
don't.
Rangers really
I
want him to.
If Galland walks up to Kreider right now and goes, "Hey, do you wanna relax and just sit out a game?" He's gonna look at him and he goes, "Who do you think you're talking to? I'm gonna go for 55." You know,
Yeah.
he, he has a goal. Look, if Kreider was at 41 goals, where it's like a different conversation, but he is legitimately in reach of tying Yager's franchise record. Of course, he wants it. He's not gonna sit a game. Fox, yeah, I'd be okay with sitting Fox, but before doing that, I would shake up those pairings. Miller, Fox, Lindgren, Truba. Give me that for a couple of games. See if that maybe reinvigorates the defense a little bit by some of those guys.
As long
Um,
as it's not completely throwing off everybody's game before
yeah.
playoffs, I'm in favor of it.
Panarin, I don't think Panarin's going to sit. He didn't play every game this season because he had a little bit of an injury early on. And Zabanjan, I don't know. I think the players that are going to sit are going to be the players that play with a little bit of an edge, like Goudreau, uh, Reeves, of course. And on defense, yeah, I think that third pairing, you're going to see some rotations when Nemeth is back. But yeah, I don't see Kreider sitting. Maybe Zibanejad or maybe Zibanejad and Fox. Zibanejad and Fox would be my first choices to sit for a game.
Watermelon here says, "What is the most realistic scenario for the Rangers in playoffs?" There is no true realistic scenario. We can't this is just our opinions, obviously. For me, I think the most realistic scenario for the Mets. I'm not the Mets. See the Rangers. I'm always back and forth. I got Mets coverage right after this too. For people wondering, but for the Rangers at least, I think the most realistic scenario is that they will battle and have a very good first round regardless on if they win or lose. I don't see a world where the Rangers go into the first round of playoffs and get completely dominated, outplayed, however you'd like to call it. I think it's going to be a grind. I don't think it's necessarily going to be easy round. And I'm not guaranteeing that they are going to win the first round, but I do feel strong that it's going to be a good one and it won't be for a lack of effort. It won't be utter domination like what we saw against Carolina in the bubble, for instance.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I just want them to play 7 games. I said that at the start of the season. If they play 7 games, it means they reach the second round or they get a game 7 exit. With the players we added at the deadline, I'm confident we have a good shot at making the second round. But the second round is going to be tricky. If you don't have home ice advantage, it's going to be a really, really tough task.
It is. But again, that's a good problem to have. Should we get there?
Of course, and also let's not forget, we should just be happy that we're in the playoffs, and if we make it to the second round, that is a great result.
That is a great result for your first year under
No
Gallant.
team in NHL history has ever won a cup after missing the playoffs at least 2 years in a row. We missed the playoffs 4 years in a row.
Yeah,
The last time
they would really have to do some magical things this
the last time we
postseason.
made the playoffs, I still lived in the Netherlands. I moved countries twice since the last time we played in the
Steven's
playoffs.
been all over the place since the last time the Rangers were in playoffs. You
I
kidding?
relocated for 2 different jobs since the Rangers were last in the playoffs.
A lot has changed for me too since the last time
Yeah,
the Rangers were in
yeah,
playoffs.
yeah.
I can assure you right now, I never would have thought I'd be sitting here talking to you right now. The last time the Rangers
I
had
know, right?
playoffs. So
It's crazy how
exactly.
things have changed. So
Yes. Damon, what a good comment. I have a question for Steven. How do we get permission to talk to you during your Twitter spaces after games? So that's a very easy, I know how to do it. I know that you do too.
well, yeah. So the thing is, I think the problem here, and I had this problem early on. If you use Twitter on your desktop, it doesn't allow you to join with a microphone. You can only listen.
okay.
You have
That's
to use a
probably the issue.
mobile device to actually request. If you enter a space on a mobile device, on the left bottom corner, there's a little microphone icon where you can request to speak, but it doesn't work on the desktop version of Twitter.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's probably what the issue is having. So
Yeah.
there you go. Hope that answered your question. We're going to answer a couple more before we wrap things up, folks. So David, shout out to you, David. Hope you were doing well, my friend. We lost the Ben Myers sweepstakes. Big deal? No, not at all. The Rangers got a really nice forward that we saw, of course, recently. The diehard Ranger fan, grew up a Ranger fan too, from UMass. So thankfully, the Rangers landed him. I'm excited to see what he's going to bring. But two,
Yeah.
Ben Myers, did Myers go to Minnesota? Is that what happened?
Colorado.
Oh, okay. That's a little bit of a surprise. I
The
thought
thing
that
is,
Minnesota was going to.
Colorado cannot afford to keep Kadri, so there's a hole to fill there.
That's a good point. So
And the
yeah,
Rangers just added Copp, and they already have Zibanejad and Hedel, so I cannot really blame Ben Myers for not coming to the Rangers.
yeah, I can't blame Ben Myers. I never saw anything to insinuate that the Rangers were in on Myers, where there was
They
mutual
probably
interest.
were. The type of player, the type of undrafted free agent that Ben Myers is, all 32 teams at least had a conversation with him or his agent.
Yeah, and it was probably
Guaranteed.
just based on best fit. And I'm sure that they
Guaranteed.
did look
Yeah.
at Kadri's status in
Mhm.
Colorado as like,
Yeah.
okay, so you're telling me I have a chance to slot in this lineup like full time next year? Yeah.
Do you remember Jonathan Marchessault playing for the Connecticut Whale?
Yeah.
And then the Rangers offered him an entry-level contract because he was playing in Hartford on an AHL deal. They offered him an ELC, and he turned it down because this was 2014. He didn't see an opening on the team. He then signed, I think, with the Columbus Blue Jackets because he felt he
Yes.
had a better shot there to make the team. And then bounced around. He went to Tampa, then Florida, and now he's a first-line player in Vegas. Players often go where they think they have the best shot, and Ben Myers going to Colorado makes sense if you look at the cap situation, and they won't be able to keep Nazem Kadri. Whereas the Rangers added Andrew Copp, and they're going to keep either Copp or Strome. I think it's going to be Copp, but if you have Zibanejad, Copp, and Hedel, where's Ben Myers going to play?
Yeah.
That said, I would have loved Ben Myers. I think he's a great undrafted free agent from college, but I'm not going to lose sleep over not getting him.
Let's see. Two more questions we'll get to. What's the possibility of calling up Bobby Trevino and sending down McKegg? I don't expect it to happen just because Trevino is so new in the organization. I don't know how he has looked so far in Hartford. I have not followed along on a day-to-day basis on that front, but I don't see that happening. We'll see how Trevino looks come, preseason camp throughout the summer and go from there. I think I don't expect much to change. If the only way I could really see some Hartford guys coming up this late in the season is solely if the Rangers really do a lot of scratches.
Well, there's two reasons why I can give you a conclusive answer on this.
Okay.
First of all, Bobby Trevino is not on the contract with the Rangers yet. His contract starts for next season.
Oh, okay. Well, then there you go.
He's playing for the Hartford Wolfpack on an amateur tryout for the remainder of their season.
Gotcha.
So that's the first part of the question. Sending down McKegg, there's no reason to, because after the trade deadline, there is no roster limit. So there's no reason to send McKegg down.
Fair. Yeah.
So that's probably the easiest question I'll answer today.
There you go. Love to see it. You made me look silly, and that means that the pod is going as expected. Kris with the final comment says, "Are you guys as pissed off as me when Gallant did not put power play 2 on the 5-on-3?"
Yeah.
Yes.
I was
that was a joke.
talking yesterday to someone on Twitter. What do Menti Teo's girlfriend, the Loch Ness Monster, and the Rangers' second power play unit have in common?
What?
People have talked about it and claim they exist, but nobody's ever seen them.
Oh my God.
But listen, if you have a 5-on-3 for 1 minute and 55 seconds, I would play the top unit. But yeah, no, let's put it this way. I understand playing the top unit. Personally, I would start the second unit. After that Kevin Hayes penalty, I would start the second unit to tire out their first PK unit.
Yeah, no, that's smart. I would have liked to see the second unit in general, just because why
because
not?
because if you send the second unit out there for the first 30-35 seconds, they clear the puck. Now you give your opponent a choice. Do you put your second unit out there against our top unit? Or do you keep your first unit out there even though they've been on the ice for 35 seconds already? So your top unit then goes out either against their second unit, or your top unit goes out against their first unit that's already a little bit tired. And I don't think Gallant uses the second power play unit to his advantage that way. Sometimes it's best to start the power play with your second unit.
It'll be interesting to see if anything at all changes come playoff time. I don't expect it to. He's obviously going to be reliant on his
If
big,
it works, if
his
it
big
works,
gun.
it works. If our power play goes cold, you're going to see changes. But
Yeah,
as long as the power play is converting, there's no reason to change it up. The only thing I would do, like I said, is I would start the second unit sometimes, especially if you draw a penalty with your first unit guys already on the ice. And Alexandra Burrows in Montreal actually mentioned this a season or two ago when the Canadians had a really good second power play unit. And they asked him about it. And he said, well, we don't treat them as the second unit. We sometimes put them out there,
yeah,
at the start of the power play. It just depends on which players are the freshest. And that is an interesting approach for the power play. But like I said, at the same time, I cannot blame a coach for playing the top power play unit that's like second in the league.
yeah. No, I mean,
So
the Rangers power play has been a huge X factor for them all season long. We're not
yeah,
griping, by any stretch on the power play front, but at this point in the season, I would not mind that second unit gain more
I'd love to see
opportunities.
Pop instead of Strom on that right side though,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the left-handed shot.
100%, especially because you get that lefty 1T potential, that's
But
important.
again, second power play unit in the league. Can you really blame Gallant for sticking with it? No.
No, no, you can't. But okay, let's get into the upcoming schedule for the Rangers. They next time we talk, Steven, I would imagine we're probably not going to record again until potentially Friday of next week, which will be after 3 games for the Rangers.
Okay.
So at minimum, the Rangers will play 3 games before we record our next
So
pod.
since I won, I have to predict first again, right? Like the last
Yeah,
4 weeks. Okay.
yeah, like the last 4 weeks. Yes, make sure that you slip that in there. Don't forget now.
All right. So we have the Red Wings at home, the Jets at home, and then the Islanders away. Oh my God, the
And you write
Islanders.
it down this time because I'm going to lose the page.
Yes, I'll write it down. So I'm gonna go. Man, I would love to go 3-0, but the Islanders game is haunting me. You know what? I'm gonna go 2-0-1,
Son of a gun.
and I'm gonna say this is not part of the prediction, but I have a feeling that the Islanders game is one of the 2 wins. And then shots for the 3 games, I'll go, or goals, sorry, goals for the 3 games, I'll go with. I'll go with. Tough one, tough one. 2 home games. I'll go with 10.
Okay, I'm gonna go 3-0. I'm
Ooh,
concerned.
ooh.
I'm concerned for the Detroit game only because it's an early day game on weekends. I know the Rangers haven't even been terrible with them this year, but I'm never like confident in
Historically,
them.
it feels like we suck at them.
Exactly, and it's
Yeah.
Detroit, so I really should have went 2-1 there. But regardless, I'm gonna go 3-0. And for goals, I'm going to go with the Rangers. You picked 10. So do I want to go the over or the under? I'll go the under. I'll go 9. I'll go
All right.
9.
All right. Cool.
Cool. Okay. So one last thing we got to talk about is the Rangers jersey history of 53. Now,
There's 3 players.
is there any that is during my lifetime?
All 3 were during your lifetime. During your Rangers fandom, I
Yeah.
would say 1.
1.
He was included in the Rick Nash trade. His dad played for the Rangers too.
here's the thing. I got thrown off for a second because I thought of Tim Erickson, but I'm like, no, we traded him in that Rick Nash trade. And I know Erickson wasn't his number. It just he was the first guy to pop
Yes,
in my
it
head for
was.
it.
It's Tim Erickson.
Oh, it's Tim Erickson?
Tim Erickson.
Oh,
Yes.
shit. Okay. Wow.
Tim Erickson was involved in the Rick Nash trade in 2012. Yeah.
No, I know. I didn't realize he was the number 53.
Yep.
Wow.
2 more.
I'm really impressed with that one with myself.
The first one only played 1 game.
Was the second one prominent? And by the way, I'm not looking at the live stream chat right now, so I don't know what they're saying. I like to keep that in mind.
The second one, the people that were following the Rangers before the 2012 season should recognize this name. Yes,
I'd imagine it's a defenseman.
The first one was Lane Ulmer in 03-04.
Don't tell me the second one yet. I'm trying to see if I can get it. Was the second defenseman?
Yeah, defenseman. And we traded for him at the deadline in 09. We traded Nigel Dawes, Dmitry Kalinin, and Peter Pruka to the Arizona Coyotes for this guy.
Oh, now you lost me. I don't know why, but whenever I think of like older defensemen, I think of Michael Roosevelt right away.
He was also involved in a Coyotes trade. Yeah, we traded him for Volsky.
Yeah. All right. Who was it? I don't know.
Derek Morris.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. Is that the same Derek Morris? Wasn't he the one, or am I thinking of a different defenseman? Maybe I'm thinking of a Norris. I remember there was a Arizona Coyotes defenseman that scored a playoff goal on Jonathan Quick from like the halfway mark in their series in like 2012. I'm forgetting what that defenseman's name was.
He had 2 goals in the playoffs that year.
Okay.
Could be him. Yeah, we traded for him, and then he signed with the Boston Bruins, and then the Bruins traded him back to the Coyotes, where he finished out his career.
Okay, interesting. I'm so, as soon as you said Rick Nash, I just thought Tim Erickson, like first man to pop in my mind out of anyone.
Interesting thing about Derek Morris: the first time he was traded was in October 2002. He was traded for Chris Drury.
Wow. What do you look at that? Who would have thought?
Chris Drury and Stefan Yeli to the Calgary Flames for Dean McHammond, Derek Morris, and Jeff Shantz. October 1st, 2002.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was fun. Steven, do you have any final remarks before we get out of this one?
I'm just happy we're back in the playoffs. Playoffs, baby.
Playoffs, baby. Playoffs. Yes, playoffs. Rangers are back.
Let's talking about playoffs.
Hopefully next time we talk, Kris Kreider has a couple more goals, because why wouldn't he, right? Either way, we really appreciate everyone watching, listening. This was Rangers Review episode 53. Stay tuned. As long as nothing happens with our schedules, we should be back right around a week or so from now, next Friday, after a couple more games for the New York Rangers. But until then, I hope everyone has a great next week, and we'll talk to you guys again real soon. Steven, let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.